Welcome to Talk with the Mayor. I'm Scott Converse, the publisher of the Longmont Observer, and we have, of course, with us Brian Bagley, the mayor.
Hi there.
And so, Brian, bunch of stuff going on.
Bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah,
Always a bunch of stuff going on.
And some of this is going to be kind of like updates on things we've talked about before, but
Okay.
there's also some new things going on too. So you guys recently had a retreat.
We did.
And it went on for a full day.
It did.
And you had a bunch of discussions, and I've been hearing the rumors that it went really well, and I'd kind of like to get your thoughts on how it went and what you talked about and how that's relevant to the community.
I think first of all, as background, I think that the majority of council, we really want to come up with a unified vision. You've got 7 people of seven different political thoughts, 7 different visions for the community, 7 different, just opinions on what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. And the retreat was a good opportunity for all 7 of us to come together and say, what can we agree on? And what can we work together on in order to move Longmont forward? So what we came up with was a list of, really a list of certain goals that we would be cohesive in. For example, the one that my personal favorite, the one that I believe probably most strongly in, is the idea that the biggest impact we can have on a community, not just Longmont, but anywhere, is make sure that every child in your community gets a high-quality preschool education. Studies show that if you want to reduce crime in 20 to 40 years, if you want to increase your economic prosperity in 20 to 40 years, if you want to increase the strength of your family, decrease pregnancy, decrease single-parent homes, all of society's ills will be impacted for the better if you make sure children are loved, taken care of, and watched when they are in that just so critical growth period right before kindergarten. So the city has programs like we help moms read to their kids. We've got the Mayor's Book Club, but really upping the ante and really changing our focus to say, how can we figure out a way for all of our children to actually be strengthened and educated and get that learning opportunity? So that was one. We also talked about increasing economic vitality, and what that means is looking at the river corridor. We've been talking about that for the last 5 or 6 years, and making sure that area is both A, environmentally protected, and B, utilized to the fullest extent possible without sacrificing your environment in a way that will provide positively to the economic climate of Longmont, that as well. We talked, of course, about affordable housing and making Longmont a more compassionate community without, at the same time, exacerbating the problems that we have, meaning help up rather than handouts, and really. Those were the 3 things that we really talked about. And when I said the river corridor, I was also talking about Midtown, Uptown, First and Main, and really coming up with a strategy, or telling staff to come up with a strategy to really implement these things. And so we left the council retreat all unified in that vision. And that does 2 things. One, it gives us something to work towards, but it also gives us an understanding of what we're not going to do. Because even though council sets policy, we don't implement the policy. We have to rely on staff for that. And so if we say, hey, staff, come up with a plan for the river corridor and come up with a way to get everybody in town a high-quality preschool education, and hey, let's solve the homeless problem, the affordable housing problem, they're going to be busy doing that. And so when other issues pop up that might be on a federal or national level, something that's very, social media intensive, interesting to discuss, we have to have the discipline to say, wait a second, here on a local level, will this add to or detract from these goals that we set at our retreat? And so the retreat, I think, was very important.
So lots happened there.
Lots happening.
So part of what happened really there sounds like was some discussion about planning and zoning.
Correct.
And we had a little bit of a discussion about this beforehand, but tell me about how some of that was brought up, and how does that affect how people are going to build and how they're going to create things in Longmont?
Well, okay, so I've always said that Longmont is a bit schizophrenic. County Line Road 1 is where, the bastion of conservatism and the bastion of liberalism meet. So you've got half of Longmont that's conservative and half of Longmont that's progressive, and sometimes we have a hard time figuring out, those. We have a hard time figuring out which fork in the road will we take, the right one or the left one. This council, hats off to the newest members of council, people like Tim Waters, Marcia Martin, and Aaron Rodriguez, because they've really been able to come in this council, I think, both the previous or the older members, the tenured members, so to speak, and the new ones. We've really done a good job of taking the political ideologies from the left and the right and then kind of cutting away the emotion and coming up with good policy decisions. I really think that we have. That was unexpected. That was very unexpected. But I love it, so I'm grateful for it. So what was the original question? Sorry.
Well, how does that affect the what's going on with buildings? Zoning.
So, for example, how this affects what's going on with building and zoning is that so for example, you've got probably those to the left who would say, "Do not build along the river corridor," and then you've got those on the right who say, "No, let's just build, baby, build." But the policy that I think that this council is implementing is what Jim Collins, for example, in the book Built to Last, he referred to it as the genius of the and. Great companies, great organizations find a way to do both. And so we can still have a riparian setback of 150 feet. But at the same time, we can focus on those areas that would meet the setback and allow those landowners to build commercial and residential areas. It also means that we've got to confront the brutal facts of reality that basically say you cannot embrace everything without at least understanding how one thing you're doing will impact another. For example, Longmont, just a month or two ago, we increased our open space acquisition by about 11%. Mm-hmm. It's hard to maintain affordable housing when you are taking land off the tax rolls, off the development rolls. And so if you've got two people that want a house and you have the potential to build two houses, and all of a sudden you say, nope, we're taking one lot, and we're making that open space. Now there's two people who want one house. Obviously, the price of that house is going to increase because the demand just increased. Then you make it even worse because a third and fourth person move into town because Longmont's so awesome. They love the views. They love the culture. They love the art. They love the economy. They love the home, the hip vibe. At the same time, they love the small town, old town feel. We continue to do things to protect and preserve what Longmont is. But at the same time, that is having a detrimental impact on those who want to move into Longmont. Now, if you own property here, it's great, right? If you buy a house for $200,000 and then can sell it for $600,000 later, you're loving life. But it's really not helping when we need to make sure that those people who answer our police calls, teach our children, drive our ambulances, fight our fires, serve our food. When those people can't afford a home in Longmont, it just raises a whole basket of issues that we have to face. Mm-hmm. And right now, Longmont, we on one hand will do things that are going to impact the affordability of housing, but then we turn around and say, oh my gosh, we've got an affordability crisis. And so we just have to be careful that when we're doing things that we at least understand what the impact is going to have on what we're trying to accomplish.
So say for instance somebody wanted to come and build a 10, 12-story building.
Right.
That's going to, right now we have 120,000, 130,000-ish high end of our population target?
They say 120 to 125.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then if we change the way we build things,
oh yeah,
around density and height.
I have said this publicly and privately many times that over the last year, the policy changes that council is beginning to consider, if we act on them, will change that number. Mm-hmm. I mean, for example, if at build out is determined to be 125,000 with the current, land use code, if we change it and we are now looking at a new land use code, and the height of our buildings, for example, are now going to be permitted, right now it's at 4 stories. Well, now we're going to allow a 5th story if you're near a junction of transportation. So First and Main, for example, we allow 5 stories. Well, if you're willing to add an affordable housing component to that, we'll allow you to have a 6th story. So if we're basically increasing our population where we're developing or redeveloping by a third, that's going to have a significant impact on that 125,000 number. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying as we make the policy changes, let's at least be aware of what the consequence will be. Right. Because on one hand, people will say, no, we do not want to take away the views. No, we don't want to take away from what downtown is. Or no, we want to maintain that small town feel. Well, that's fine, but you cannot then turn around and say, oh, well, we're upset because housing is becoming unaffordable. I mean, the only way you're going to be able to tackle the affordability problem is through density. Meaning, if you want to meet demand, you have to increase supply. And considering that Longmont is pretty much built out and then is surrounded by a moat of open space, the only solution is density. Go up, because we can't go out. And so, and right now, council's discussing, well, what are we going to do? And the new land use code is going to allow the six stories. Now, that would be the exception rather than the rule, because most multi-story buildings are not going to be located at a junction where there's transportation, or it's not, meaning a transportation hub, because on First and Main, we're going to be building a bus and train station. Or affordable housing, of course, is more likely, because that is something that City Council is currently focusing on. We're in the process of establishing goals on making sure that we have a way of hopefully hitting that target of 10 and possibly 12% of our housing stock as being assigned and designated as permanently affordable. But even then, that's just, even that's not enough. Even if we hit that target in the year 2035, which is the current goal, that you will never be able to, if I'm selling my house for below market, you will always have multiple people showing up and saying, I want that house. If I sell a $750,000 house for $250,000, we will have a line from here to Greeley and beyond of people who want that house. And so those are the economic and just facts that City Council is currently dealing with.
What about more distributed stuff like ADUs? Boulder just approved they're looking for up to 20%. Saturation, almost 5,000 new units over time.
Yeah,
Los Angeles did this.
You're talking about their inclusionary zoning policies?
Yeah, where you can build an ADU in your backyard.
Yeah,
granny flats.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not so the auxiliary dwelling unit is what you're referring to. And so in other words, if you want to build on something to your house, we already allow that. Meaning, I don't know exactly the details, but I remember being on council just within the last year or maybe the last 2 years, we approved an ADU policy that would allow people to build auxiliary dwelling units.
I think there's a bunch of parking issues and
stuff
that makes it so most people can't really do it yet.
Again, so parking issues. I mean, if there's no place to park, I mean, so we are constrained by reality.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to what I was talking about. Well, we can allow you to build an auxiliary dwelling unit, but if there's no place to park your car, or the other neighbors are going to get upset because you happen to get home from work at 3:30, so when they get home at 4:30 or 5 and they have no place to park their car, people are going to get upset.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is, I mean, for example, one thing that we talk about is making Longmont and making new development. We want Longmont to be a walkable city, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great, but what I'm always thinking in the back of my mind is this Fast Company had an article about 10 years ago talking about the urban sprawl that happened in Colorado. I mean, Longmont sprawled. You know, it's hard to go back and develop a walkable city when 95% of your city has already been developed. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be a long time coming before Longmont is a truly walkable, integrated city, because there's no greenfield left, meaning there's no place to actually go in and develop new residential or high-density units. Mm-hmm. We're looking at what we call brownfield, or redevelopment opportunities. We have to wait for buildings to become old and ready to fall down, and then someone will come in and raise them and build something new. And so it's the issue you mentioned with the auxiliary dwelling units and parking, and that's a perfect example of what I was referring to. It's not an easy solution. And so, and then again, I'm also not, when you mention cities like San Francisco or Los Angeles or Boulder, you know, you have to be careful, because it costs just as much to build a home in Longmont as it does Boulder. You know, the carpenters, the plumbers, they can serve both markets. Mm-hmm. The reason why Boulder is more expensive is because of the land price. And so when you're developing in Boulder versus Longmont, you know, the profitability is a little bit higher in Boulder versus Longmont. So if you put requirements on builders and developers here in Longmont, we can't do the same thing that Boulder does. For example, they have what's called an inclusionary zoning policy that basically says 20% of everything you build has to be permanently affordable. Plus, on top of that, another 5% has to go towards, another 5% also has to go towards affordability, but just people who earn a little bit more money. And so a quarter of everything a developer builds has to be designated as affordable. And Longmont, if we were to do that, there's some real question as to whether or not we get anybody developing. And again, you might say, oh, that's great. We don't want those bad developers taking advantage of people. You know, they're earning money and they're congesting our streets and they're evil developer. No. Well, you might believe that, but the consequence is going to be that homes will become less affordable for those who want to either move into Longmont or those who want to remain in Longmont. And so, again, all issues that we constantly discuss and constantly try to understand as a city council. But the good news is Longmont is not alone. Every community in the United States where people want to live are experiencing these same challenges and obstacles.
All right. Let's shift to one of your favorite subjects.
My favorite subject.
One of the city council's favorite subjects, the oil and gas.
Oil and gas, yes.
So we have
we have an agreement.
We have a deal.
Yes, we have a deal.
And it's signed off on, moving
signed
forward.
Off.
What does it mean to Longmont?
What it means to Longmont is there will be no more surface interruption or disruption from oil and gas activity. It means that if you're going to drill and look for minerals in Longmont, you can't do it. You're going to have to put your drill head, your drill site, your wells outside city limits. You can still go 8,000 feet under and come under Longmont, but as far as putting wellheads and the volatile organic compounds and the benzene and all the environmental contaminants that come along with drilling and fracking at the surface, those days are over.
Period.
And
that's basically the gist of what the whole thing is.
And that was the gist. Get them out of town, and now the fight, if you want to fight, now take the fight to Weld County, because Longmont has done their part.
All right. Yeah, and we've talked about this so much. I think that sums it up. However, let's talk about another thing we've talked about before, DACA and sanctuary cities.
Okay.
And what are your thoughts about where we're currently at on that now? Because it's becoming a hotter and hotter issue.
It is. It is a hot issue. First of all, I support DACA. 100%. No ifs, ands, or buts. No, I support DACA. I think that children who came under the age of 18 at the behest of their parents shouldn't be punished for decisions that basically their parents took. They didn't break the law. They weren't susceptible to it, but they are susceptible to it. And I think that someone who came here under the age of 18 who wants to stay should be provided an opportunity to get an education, get a job, pay taxes, contribute to our economy and the overall climate of our community or any community in the United States, and be able to be granted a path to citizenship. That's what I think. Now, as far as sanctuary cities go, the question is, well, what is a sanctuary city? You know, so often right now, I mean, since about 2008, 2007, whenever Facebook came out, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, ever since social media came out, it gave a platform to any Tom, Dick, and Harry, or any, pick 3 female names. But my point is, anyone who has an opinion is free to spit it out to all their friends, and a lot of times not even their friends. It doesn't matter if you're some Russian that nobody knows. It doesn't matter if you're the mayor of Longmont. It doesn't matter if you're the Longmont Observer. Anybody can spit it out, and there is no way to know who it is, to test the veracity of their claim, or maybe there is, but nobody has the time. And so in this particular case, I just think that, but anyway, what was the question again?
Sanctuary cities.
Sanctuary cities, yes. So in this particular case, I mean, we argue, again, it's a national ideological question. We have our left tribe and our right tribe. And right tribe says, no, we must do away with sanctuary cities. And the left says, no, we must have sanctuary cities. But what does that mean, right? And so Longmont, I don't know what other people think it means, but Longmont has not declared itself a sanctuary city with a label. But Longmont acts, I believe, in accordance of the spirit of what is a sanctuary city. Meaning, we do not, our police force, our city employees do not ask about a person's immigration status. We do not request papers or documents. We do not go into people's homes at the request of the federal government unless there is a warrant, and that warrant is criminal in nature, meaning, hey, this person killed someone, raped someone, stole something. We do not cooperate with ICE when they say, hey, we want your help to go execute a federal immigration warrant. Our tax dollars should not be used for that purpose. And also morally, I just think that if you are, as many people know, my wife is a Mexican immigrant. She's now a U.S. citizen. I've adopted 3. I've got a daughter, of course, who's 19, that's mine by biology, but I've got 3 boys who are mine by adoption, who have a history of immigration. I'm not going to go into that. But imagine for a second that they execute a warrant on my home because my family's brown. No, that's not okay. How do they know what their immigration status is? The other thing is that let's suppose that you are an immigrant who's undocumented and you witness a crime. Let's suppose that there's someone out there, there's a woman by the name of Rita who's missing. What happens if there are 2 or 3 undocumented immigrants that saw what happened, but they're scared to come forward because they don't want to be deported? And so it's for all kinds of reasons: community safety, community cohesiveness, just being good human beings. All that becomes impacted if your police force begins sniffing around to try to determine whether or not somebody's documented or undocumented only because of the color of your skin. Because I guarantee you, nobody's going to be going door to door looking for Canadians.
All right. Guns. Let's talk about guns.
Oh, joy. Let's talk about guns.
So we had a pretty interesting city council meeting a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Boulder banned assault rifles and some other things via ordinance, and the Second Amendment folks showed up kind of in force.
They did?
For this city council meeting.
Right.
What was that about?
So, and I feel bad because I've gotten a lot of contact from Moms Demand Action. I think that group misunderstood.
This is an anti-gun group or
gun
violence?
It is seen as an anti-gun group, but I think that they would argue that they are a gun safety group. Now, again, it depends on how you split hairs, but that what I have learned since the proclamation, that most of the people that belong to that group have suffered some type of familiar or close friendship, someone who has actually suffered as a result of gun violence.
Talk about the proclamation a bit first. So
So the proclamation that we issued basically was a proclamation that brought awareness, and Mayor Coombs did it, I think, for several years. I did it this year, that basically brought attention to the fact that we can both respect the Second Amendment, but at the same time, we need to be mindful that gun safety and gun violence in particular is an issue in our society. And things on a local level, and a state level, and a national level should be done to address gun safety. That was the gist of the proclamation. Now, where I got in a little bit of trouble, apparently, was there was a group that asked me to read, there was a group that provided a proclamation. I changed it a little bit for two reasons. One, my signature goes on it. And so if I'm going to have to defend it, I want to be able to defend it. So I told city staff, check all the facts that were in there. There was one fact in there, I don't remember what it was, that they could not verify. I'm not saying that this group were liars. It's just that I didn't want to defend the fact that I was unsure that was true. I don't even remember what the fact was. So they removed one fact. I also softened up the language at the end. Probably wouldn't have done that, except that given what Boulder had just done, the proclamation read that city council was willing to do anything and everything necessary to stop gun violence, and the implication or the indication, the words seem to suggest doing something like what Boulder did. I am not for that, so I could not sign that or state that. But nevertheless, the proclamation, as I changed it, upset a lot of Second Amendment supporters or pro-gun people. The reason why they showed up, so a lot of people think that I somehow invited them. I didn't invite them. They came because they were angry with me as the mayor signing and issuing this proclamation on gun safety and anti-gun violence.
Which is something that we've done every year?
Yeah. And so they were upset, and I made some comments during the meeting. And the comments I made, for example, this group challenged my facts. They said, these facts are wrong. And so when I was reading the proclamation, which I've never done before, I stopped and I said, I checked this fact and it's correct. I think that the Moms Demand Action group took that as me saying, well, this one I checked, so I kept this one in. I was really saying to the 60 people who were there, and likely armed, hey, I checked this fact, and I know that some of you said it wasn't a fact, but it is indeed a fact. And so, I made some comments there along the lines of, I'm a gun owner. I attend gun shows. I believe in the Second Amendment. And so I said statements like that were taken that some took as being insensitive. Again, I didn't mean them. I wasn't trying to be insensitive. I didn't mean I was being insensitive, and thus the definition of insensitive is you're not aware that you're being insensitive. So I was insensitive, and I apologize for being insensitive. But really what I was saying is, hey, you 60 people who are here at Public and Invited to be Heard, to tell me that I shouldn't read this proclamation, I want you to know that I'm a gun owner, but I still believe in gun safety and doing everything we can to minimize gun violence. And so don't be standing up here and treating me like the enemy. I'm one of you, but I'm still going to read the proclamation, and I know you don't want me to, but I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so that was really what I was trying to do. Okay. And really what I did in the end was just upset two groups. Because you had the Moms Demand Action who said, you watered down our proclamation and you were insensitive to it. And then at the same time, you had the Second Amendment folks showing up saying, well, how dare you issue this proclamation? Why don't you do a proclamation for us? And so I said, well, I'll do a proclamation for anybody. So if you want to write it right now, if anybody, I've done proclamations for, the Indian Cricket League here in town. Or there was a guy who wanted me to do a proclamation for his wife's birthday. Or, so they don't all get read from the dais, but as long as it's not something that is inappropriate or something that I can't get behind, I'm willing to issue the proclamation. And even if it's something that's politically charged, I won't step away from it. We'll still do it. And if necessary, I'll go to city council and I'll get their support before I do it. So, that was a rough night. That was a rough night.
I would say that the definition of nonpartisan angering both sides.
Yeah, well, I do that a lot. I'll tell that to, I wish I was, as a kid, telling my mom and dad, hey, both of you guys, I've angered you both.
So this just came up, actually, the last few days. We're writing a story on it right now. The St. Vrain Valley School District is about to hold a couple of public meetings to discuss putting an assault rifle in a safe into Niwot and Lyon high schools at the request of the Boulder Sheriff's Department.
Right.
And apparently this has been a request that's happened in the past and has always been denied, but they've decided to consider it, and they are having these two public meetings, Tuesday night in Lyons and Thursday night here at, I think, Sunset Middle School. And we've talked to a few parents about it, and the response has been pretty equivocal. I won't give you, you can imagine, I suspect, but what's your opinion on whether or not we should do something like that?
So I would assume, and I don't know, but I would assume that parents wouldn't want that.
That's a fair assumption.
Only because, again, I would assume that parents wouldn't want that because there is currently a stigma that goes along with the word AR-15.
And that is the rifle that they're planning on putting
in
the school.
And so,
by the way, just to finish so there's all, and it's for the public resource officer. And they're thinking, because we talked to the Boulder Sheriff's Department, and we asked Mike Butler, the police chief, his thoughts. And so the bottom line there is that their view is that somebody comes in with an assault rifle, and you've got a cop basically there with a pistol. It's not a fair.
It's not.
Right, and they should have access to a big gun.
Yeah.
And it's, that's not a reason or an unreasonable point of view. So that's the general thinking behind it. Everybody's still kind of not sure what to think about it yet.
I'll look at, I own AR-15s and I own firearms. I've got, we've done this same broadcast before. I've got antique firearms on the wall in my office. Again, I am not, I don't hunt. I don't even target shoot that much. I just like collecting firearms. Don't know why, but anyway. But
everybody has a hobby.
Everybody has a hobby. But and I also have 3 children in the St. Vrain School District. 1 at Trail Ridge, 2 at Westview. If there is a school shooting that occurs, and someone has handgun, shotgun, AR-15. I don't care what they have. I would want the school resource officer to have immediate access to whatever tools that are necessary in order to stop that threat. And so we're not talking about an AR-15 that's being available for children and principals and teachers to use.
No, it'll be in a safe.
Yeah, we're talking about a tool for a paramilitary officer to be able to access in the event that my children are under assault. And so again, I think that parents who wouldn't want an AR-15 there, it's more of an ideological response, more of a, oh my gosh, we don't want AR-15s around our children at all. Well, that's fine, but what if you don't have a choice? What happens if someone comes to school with an AR-15, an AK-47, a host of other semi-automatic weapons, again, shotgun, handgun, whatever? I want that resource officer to have the tools necessary to end the threat. Period. Full stop. Then again, I'm speaking as a parent, not as the mayor, because I have no authority whatsoever over the school district, or even as what the chief of police does. We have the mayor and the city council. We don't have authority over the policy for the police department.
So we've talked to some teachers about this as well, and there's a group that is encouraging, I think, the same people that showed up at the council to come to these public meetings, and their primary goal is to see that all teachers are armed with concealed weapons. That's their primary goal. And that is what this is what apparently something the teachers have thought is going to happen, and that this is the beginning of that.
Here's what I'm going to echo what our police chief say. So first of all, I am not for that. I think it's silly, and this is what I'm about ready to say. I hope is not taken as, oh my gosh, Brian Bagley's blind to the epidemic. Obviously, throughout our nation, at least on a national scale, we have an issue with children shooting up their schools, right? I don't know what the reason is. I'm not an expert, but they are shooting up their schools, and they are using all kinds of firearms to do it. Now, what's the solution? I don't know, right? I mean, I've got my own personal ideas, but just being honest, everybody who says, oh, I know the answer, it's because of this, we don't know, right? Here locally, meaning Longmont, northern Colorado, we had Columbine occur. One instance, and how long's that been? 10, 15 years?
Yeah,
10 years? So 17 kids died that day. I think it was 17. And then we had the Arvada shooting, which wasn't a school, but it was a movie theater. But when you look at the amount of deaths as a result of mass shootings compared to what the number one problem in our community, which is domestic violence. You were a bigger threat being in your home with your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend than you are at being in the movie theater or at school. You say whatever you want, that is a fact, right? Statistically speaking, that is a fact.
Right.
So we do not, at least locally, heaven forbid, that something doesn't happen here at a local level ever, right? But at least as of now, Longmont has never experienced a mass shooting. I can think of a lot of stabbings that we've had. I can think of a lot of fist fights that we've had, a lot of drunk driving that we've had. But I can't think. The last thing that really comes to mind was, ironically, a mentally ill gentleman assaulted a police officer down on Ken Pratt outside the Best Buy, and I think he used a semi-automatic weapon. And luckily, that police officer was able to respond with his own assault rifle. And because of his training and his character and his talents, he was able to come out on top, thank goodness. So we don't have that problem right now. So the real question isn't, well, how do we handle that epidemic? The question is, how do we make sure we're not infected by it? Or if we are infected, how do we make sure that we vaccinate ourselves or take whatever medication we have as a community, whatever we just need to make sure it never happens. And so putting AR-15s in our school, I think is as long as it's there and only accessible to a police officer, I don't think it's a problem. And I think that the school district having that discussion, I think it's as a parent, I'll participate in it. As the mayor, I will encourage the experts to, like Chief Butler and Don Haddad and other people who will have to make the ultimate decision. I'll support whatever decision they come up with, even if I don't agree with it. But I don't think that arming teachers is the right way to go. First of all, I don't think that some teachers feel comfortable around firearms. I also don't think that some teachers would be really adept with firearms. Now, if you have a concealed weapons permit and you have training and you want to, maybe, right? But just blanketly saying, let's force everyone to carry a gun, I think that's silly. I really do.
All right. So, do you have any things specifically that you're working on that you would like the city to know about? Any causes or?
Nothing that I want to make public yet. I've got some ideas.
Okay. Yeah.
And so what I mean is that in the past we've had a lot of history in Longmont with certain problems, and I would love to talk on the radio about personally, not the council, but the mayor. I am doing some things that I would like to have happen in Longmont. Mm-hmm. But I also know, just like oil and gas, if you make it public too soon, everybody gets involved and shares their opinion, and it doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. So I prefer to, put my shoulder to the wheel, get everything ready to present to council and present to the community, and make my case then when everything's ready. All right. So stay tuned.
We look forward to talking to you about it. All right, folks, thank you very much for listening, and I would like to thank Mayor Brian Bagley, and you have been listening to Talk with the Mayor.
Thanks, guys.